This is the Whole Care Network, helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome, my friend. This is A Time to Care, the Caregivers podcast. I'm Isabel Melgarejo, your host. And today with me, I have Jodi Benusa. She is an expert in geriatric consultations and solutions, and she helps families place their loved ones in assisted living care. Welcome, Jodi.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Isabel, for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm excited.
So tell me more about what type of work do you do?
Okay. Well, I could take up 2 hours with that. But so I classify myself as an independent geriatric consultant. That's a mouthful. And a lot of people don't quite understand what that means. In simpler terms, I love working with the elderly and their families, and pretty much getting through any crisis or any situation that comes up. My specialty, I have two specialties, and that is finding the right senior living community for your aging loved one. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And the second thing that I specialize in, and I love doing this, is kind of like crisis counseling, if you will. I do hourly consulting where if you find yourself in a situation and you don't know what to do, you can schedule an hour with me and pretty much I can get through it. Like, I will listen to what is happening before I say, yes, I can help you. Like, I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not, but I have not had a situation that I have not been able to get through. So senior living locator / assisted living locator and crisis intervention counseling, so to speak.
Why do you love doing these so much?
First thing that comes up for me when you ask me that question is, I remember my grandmother. She was in her 80s when she passed, and she was the youngest person I knew. And it was her mind, it was her mindset, and all the things that just really made me literally fall in love with that population. And I'll be honest, I am a social worker. I have been a social worker my entire life. I remember being this small little girl and wanting to help. Like, that's me. That's just who I am. So I started my actual social work career in a nursing home, and I knew it was the right fit. It was 100% right. And then I moved away, and then I became a medical social worker in a level 2 trauma center. And I worked on the orthopedic neurosciences units for 16 years, nearly 16 years. And that's where I really had in-depth interaction with the elderly that would come in that maybe were struggling with dementia and had fallen and fractured their hip. Or on the neurosciences side, an elderly person with a stroke, and helping the family navigate what was next. So that's really how I really started falling in love with being a true advocate for the elderly.
I love your services because you work nationwide, and one of the things that you mentioned the first time we met, it was I only recommend one place, and that place is the right place. How do you find those places?
I do get questions like, how do you do that, Jodi? How can you work anywhere in the US? Don't you have to go visit the communities? Don't you have to see what's happening? And I say, no, I don't. Because imagine me working back at the hospital. I never left. I did all of my work from my desk in my hospital little office area. It was my job to find the right place for my patients and their families. So what I've done is I've taken that skill set and I've brought it to the public. So yeah, it's actually not that hard for me. I know what questions to ask when I call. Let's say, Isabel, let's just say that, where do you live again? What state?
I'm in Texas.
In Texas. Yep. So you're in Texas, and let's for the sake of this, say that your mom is residing in Michigan. We'll just pick a spot. You can't go and see everything. So what I would do is I would research. Well, first of all, I have to get to know your mom. I have to understand her needs and expectations, and we do a full assessment. Then I research the communities in her area or whatever area you tell me that she wants to live in, and I find that one. I find the one. I will give you a list of my top, depending on what I find, 3 to 6 communities that I think would be okay. But my number one is going to be at the top. And I'm also going to give you a list of pros and cons for each of the communities that I come up with for you. So I basically do all the homework and I do it right. I don't get glossed over by all the pretty websites, by all the sales flyers. I dig in. I take a look at their records. I research their well, depending on what, I don't want to get into technical terms, but I look for violations and I ask them about it. I talk to the director of nursing. I talk to the sales rep. I talk to the receptionist when she answers the phone. And I ask questions.
Obviously, there are a lot of right communities, and it depends on every case what is the right community for you. Maybe a small place with not a lot of people, and like maybe not in the city, but on the outskirts. Like, I don't know. There are things that might be depending on personal taste.
Mm-hmm.
But what, in your opinion, are like the big no-nos? These places never gonna be in my list.
Sure. The first thing that I think of when you say that is, I have to have a community that is going to allow my client to age in place. That is one of the top questions that I ask. And I don't just ask that question. I have them, before I ask any further questions, have them explain to me their community's philosophy. I don't want to give them what I'm looking for. I want them to share what they're doing and what they believe in.
I've read that if a management changes often, that's a big no-no, for example.
Yes, I just did a YouTube video yesterday about that. It's what is it? How to find the right assisted living. I can't remember the exact title, but in there I give you the 4 steps on how you can find the right assisted living. And one of the things is watch for red flags. If there's a high staff turnover in any senior living community, that means that the employees are not happy, which means inconsistent care for your loved one.
Yeah, you want, especially people dealing with the dementia, you want the same person being with them all the time. And obviously things happen. They might move somewhere else with their families, they might retire, they might
Right.
have their own lives, but for the most part, you want that one person to be consistent in their lives.
Consistency is of utmost importance, especially, Isabel, when you're talking about someone that has dementia.
Yeah. Yeah. And you want that to be part of it. So what other red flags are there?
Hidden fees. When I am researching, I ask. And, a lot of people, they just don't know to ask these questions. And I don't say, what are your hidden fees? But I say, explain to me how my client might encounter additional fees in the future. You'll be surprised at some of the things. Yeah, you would be really surprised. And I want to be honest with my clients. I'm gonna share everything. I have encountered facilities that if you are in assisted living and you need to be hospitalized, you come back, there's a charge. There's all kinds of crazy things kind of like woven in that is in the really tiny fine print. And it's my job to find those things and let you know. Another red flag, and this is all depending on the client's situation, but and I don't get deep into my clients' finances because it's not my business, but I do ask a couple of questions, and that is, how long will your finances support assisted living? And that's where I leave it. I don't ask for any more details, and I have to trust my clients to tell me the truth. The reason I ask that is because depending on what state you're in, depending on the locale, some states, some places do have waivers that when your funds run out or run low, you can then transition to either a family care or some kind of a Medicaid waiver. But here's the trick. Let's say you have 2 years of private pay funds, okay? 2 years, and then you're done. You don't have any more. So some communities are going to say, sorry, we need you to have 3 years of private pay before we'll allow you to transition.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that I dig into that and give you all of the facts. So that's a red flag. There are some communities that, I mean, there some states it's very difficult to find an assisted living that will allow you to transition into a waiver program.
It depends on the family and
if I have a family and I mean, everybody has their own story, but if I have a family that only has a year of private pay, that doesn't mean I can't help them. But what that means is I need to find a community where they can be admitted with the year of private pay and then smoothly transition so they don't have to move again. That's the thing right there, Isabel. I do not want my families to have to continue to shift around and move around.
And obviously people end up in care for different reasons. Some of them move into independent living just to have the community. And it's very different moving because you want the community, you want other people like you, make new friends. I mean, I've heard of communities that even plan trips to wherever.
Right.
So isn't that fun?
I want to live there.
Yeah, there are some of them. It's like, okay, so I get like 2 trips a year to like Europe and the Middle East. That
Yeah.
sounds fantastic. And obviously, it all depends on the family. And one of the things that I usually talk with my clients is having a very clear idea of what they want. So how do you help your clients figure that out, what they truly want?
Yep. So when I'm working on my initial assessments, because I don't just start making phone calls, I do have to get to know you and the entire family. That's important to me. I do what we call in the social work world a functional screen, and that is going to tell me the level of care that you're going to need. Maybe you do qualify for independent living. Maybe you need assisted living. Maybe you need a memory care. Maybe you need, so here's a new word, maybe for some people, high acuity care. High acuity care does not necessarily mean nursing home care or long-term care. So that is my job. And I ask you questions about your past and what you did and hobbies and all kinds of fun things. Like, what kind of foods do you like? What type of television do you like? Do you like to garden? All kinds of questions I ask. And all of that is me gathering facts about you and me understanding what community you're going to plug into the easiest. It's always, not always, but typically a transition to move from your home into a community, especially if it's something that you're not really wanting to do. So that is so important that I find that community that is going to be easier for you to plug into.
Obviously, I don't do what you do, but when people ask, is find places where you're going to be able to do what you love.
Yes. Yeah. Let me, if I can digress just a moment, something that has just been heavy on my heart, and I think I can even hear it in my voice as I start to talk about it. What makes someone like me an independent geriatric consultant, what makes me so different is I take the time to understand, I take the time to ask questions, and I'm going to give you my number one pick. I'll give you a couple more too, just in case, but I give you that number one. Whereas, Isabel, when I was working at the hospital, because our beds were so short, we had too many patients and not enough beds for them, that it was my job to get people out as quickly as I could. And it didn't matter if they wanted to go to that facility or not. It broke my heart. I vowed to never, ever just make blanket referrals again. So that is the biggest difference between me and what I call the big box locators. And we'll just leave that there. I think we kind of all know who some of the big box locators are. They are paid on a commission from the senior living community. I am not. My client pays me, which makes me highly accountable. So what they're going to do, what the big box locators are going to do, they're going to send out every referral to the communities in your area that they have a contract with. So the best community might not even be on their radar.
What you do and what we both do is so important because you don't want to get in a position in which you have to make a decision now. You have to make this decision today or tomorrow. We don't want to be in that place
Right.
because when you have to make this decision today, how long does it take you to find that one community? Probably more than a couple of days, I would
Well,
believe.
it varies. I will tell you that one of the longest discharges that I assisted in was from Wisconsin back to China. That's one reason why working anywhere in the US is actually pretty simple. The process is the same no matter where you live in the US. I have been very successful in doing my job quickly. If there is a crisis and if you need help quickly, I can do that. As long as I have you as my client, you are going to be my top priority and I will focus on that. And
Mhm.
I've been very successful with communities that have significant wait lists, significant, like 15 or more, getting my client bumped up to the top. And that's because the communities trust me that I'm giving them a good referral. It actually works really, really well. I've worked with several families that their loved one got a 30-day notice in the community where they're living and they don't know what to do. And within just a week or 2 weeks, depending, I can usually find another spot for them.
That is scary.
But what happens and what is so good is, like, because that is a crisis situation. Can you imagine your loved one is in memory care or your loved one is in assisted living and they get a 30-day notice? That's scary within itself. That's a crisis.
Yes, it is a crisis
So
because you're dealing with the stress of finding someone, plus it is, and I always say, and you're so probably you're really, really good with everybody. Well, not without the probably, you're really, really good with everybody. But if you were to try to do the same thing with you, it would be very different because you would be dealing with your own feelings and emotions of stress, of trying to figure the things out. It's your loved one that's there. You have your own life. Probably you would be able to do it. Like, I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna serve any clients for these a few days and solve my issue. But what happens with majority of people is that you don't know where to start. You don't know what's happening. You're dealing with emotions of anger because they gave you a 30-day notice. You're upset, you're worried. It is just so complex to make decisions when you're in that state of mind.
You're so right, spot on. And you're going to hear language from the communities that we will help you find a spot. And this is nothing on any of the senior living communities at all. These are just some facts that I really want to educate your audience with. You're going to hear things like, we'll help you, but the first place we find is where you're going to have to go. That's when you call me.
And what other kinds of fires do you help people go
Oh,
through?
sure. Gosh, I got a couple of really good stories. But before I tell a story, I want to share this. So if you find yourself in one of those crisis situations, I don't want you to try to reinvent the wheel. And what I mean by that is, if I need a haircut, I go to the salon. If I need my car worked on, I take it to the shop. If you're in this situation, don't try to YouTube it and figure it out, because it is complex. There's a tangled web that you've got to look. I know the system inside and out. So that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give your listeners. So a couple of my other stories. Ooh, this is good. Which ones do I pick? Let's do this one. Let's do this one. So I got a call on a Monday morning, 8 o'clock. I still was in my pajamas because I do work from home, but that's okay. I answered the phone. Jodi, I think we called you too late. Mom was hospitalized last Thursday. They're kicking her out today, and they're sending her to a nursing home on hospice to die. Mom's number one fear in her entire life was to die alone at a nursing home. Is there anything you can do? I talked with the family a little bit more, got a few details, because I knew exactly what was happening at the hospital because I lived that life. And I also knew what the family was capable of based on my questioning. I did learn that this client did reside at an assisted living. So I said, yes, I can help. I got on the phone with the DON at the assisted living. I explained the situation. The DON asked me all kinds of questions that I already asked the family because I knew what they were going to ask. I had my client home in an hour and a half, and she was able to pass peacefully with her family by her side in her apartment. That to me is that is one of my, like, thank goodness they called me.
You need a community, or everybody, we all need a community and support system,
Mhm,
because what someone else doesn't. And
mhm.
then we all share. We're all there for each other.
Yeah, yeah. Another really good story is, I got a call from a gentleman, and his significant other several months beforehand had a horrific aneurysm. She was in the hospital for 3 months. And if you know anything about the medical world, that's a long time to be in the hospital.
Yeah.
She was finally discharged to a skilled nursing facility for rehab, but only had 10 days of therapy. And then insurance didn't agree to pay anymore. And this was a younger woman. And they called me, hey, is there anything you can do? They're saying she can't get better. They're charging us a lot of money a month for long-term care. Is there anything? And I said, I think there is. And I started to dig into it and started asking questions. I understand the language. I was able, long story short, able to get her to an acute inpatient rehab. In my mind, it's the second best one in the US. I got her into that one. She rehabbed and now is home. Whereas she was in long-term care with a very poor prognosis.
What a wonderful story.
Yeah. Yeah. So that ended up fantastic. And it's simply because I know what questions to ask.
I think that's where your magic works. You know what to ask and who to ask it, and
Mhm.
you've been doing this for such a long time that you just know everything.
Oh, well, if I don't know it, I learn it. I don't know everything, but I can learn very, very quickly. And just one more really short, just trying to give you different examples. Family that their loved one was suddenly hospitalized. I don't even know why. It's something not too complicated like pneumonia, but her meds got all out of whack and the pneumonia, she was ready for discharge. She was disoriented because of hospital delirium and her medications being messed up a little bit. She got to a rehab center. Her power of attorney for healthcare had been activated at that point, and it needed to be because she was not able to make her own decisions. She got to the rehab center, rehabbed, and then was suddenly ready for discharge. She is on a waiver program, and they are looking for, or they were looking for, an assisted memory care for this woman because her POA was activated. The nearest memory care was over 60 miles away from the family. The family reached out to me and said, Jodi, is there anything you can do? And I said, well, tell me more. And I asked them questions. I always ask you questions. That's why my advocate assessment call is so valuable. It's free. That's where we determine if it's a good idea to work together.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, I got a hold of the social worker at the rehab center she was at. And I said to her, I have a hunch that we can deactivate her power of attorney for healthcare. Well, how do you do that? And I said, well, I need your medical director to assess her and make that determination. Well, the family's going to need to write a letter. And I thought, no, the family doesn't know how to write a letter. I said, can I write a letter? And sure enough, I wrote the letter, and guess what? I'm working with her now. We are getting her POA deactivated, and now she's got all these new options opened up for her so she can live close to her family.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, but it's just asking questions. It's getting curious, asking questions.
Yes, I think that part of being curious, we should all be more curious in life. So, where can people find you if they have emergencies?
The easiest way to find me is the website. There's links all over the website about scheduling that free advocate assessment call. And that's where we talk. That's where we determine whether or not working together is a good idea. And once I do take clients on, you've got me. I go on vacation, you still got me. So I take this job very seriously. I couldn't do it if I only did it half-heartedly. But the easiest way is my website, and that is USA Geriatric Services.com.
We will put the link in our show notes for everybody. Thank you so much, Jodi, for coming here today with us.
You're such a sweetheart.
This was a fantastic. I think you dropped so many gems out there for all of us.
Good. Yeah. Anyone, just feel free to reach out to me. And Isabel, thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing me to come onto your program.
Of course.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.